Raila had not pronounced himself on what happens in 2027 moving forward. Now, that's where the speculation begins. There are those, so there's no going saying that without him, there's a void there that is difficult to fill. Fortunately, though, over the years, the ODM has established, I think more than any other party, very, very clear structures, from the Central Committee to the National Executive Committee, to the National Governing Council, and various layers of leadership, from the party leader and 3 deputy party leaders, from the party chair, 4 deputy chairs, the Secretary General and the assistant, the treasurer, and all those. And so there are very clear organs from the grassroots. The ODM is the only party to juggle so many things to bring diversity of opinions into a unity of purpose and voice. And so those who say that are actually quite right. But as they say, life must continue, and the party must also continue. What we need to do is, in the absence of such a strong voice, such charisma, what must replace it is the singular speech and voice of the party. That we may disagree in terms of our approaches, but once we sit down as a party and decide, then we all agree with the singular voice of the party. That is what must happen now. Now, let me explain something around that. I know that even from the speeches at the funeral, there are those who interpreted it that there's a divergence of opinion. For example, when Sifuna spoke, when Osoti spoke, and when the other spoke. There are those who are, saying that, there are those who wish that we draw away from the support of President Ruto. There are those who wish that we continue and sustain it. And then there are also those who are not quite in the party now. They remain members, like the Waziri Mbadi, Waziri Opiyo Wandayi, Waziri Oparanya and Joho. They are no longer officials, but they remain members of the party, but they've joined the executive. Now, we have to be very clear when people are speaking as whom they are speaking, okay? First of all, my understanding is that so far from all the speeches, there is no divergence in terms of where we are. And let me explain it. We had signed the 10-point framework agreement that Raila signed with Ruto that requires certain things to be done. Some are being done, some have not been done. We are all united in urging the president to honor Raila Amolo Odinga by ensuring that the 10-point agenda is fully implemented. There's no divergence on that.
Sorry, so if that is not implemented, then there's no support for Raila Odinga?
No. We've not said that. We've said to honor the life of Raila Odinga. Let us ensure that the 10 points are fully implemented. That's number one. Number two, in that context, we joined the broad-based government. Like any government, it has a 5-year lifespan. The 5-year lifespan of this government is up to 2027, which means we continue, and no one has said others, we will continue to support this government in the context of the broad-based government for its lifespan. That is up to 2027. Now, up to his death, Raila had not pronounced himself on what happens in 2027 moving forward. Now, that's where the speculation begins. There are those, of course, who are already in the executive, yes, who naturally must urge the party to continue its support beyond 2027. And you cannot fault them because they're already in the executive, as they have robustly expressed, Honorable Wandayi, Honorable Mbadi, and the others. That's number one. Number two, there are those in the party, like our Secretary General, who say that this agreement was only up to 2027. That also is a fact. And that beyond 2027, we must determine what to do. And that chances are that the ODM might have a candidate. That is something that had been said even when Raila was alive. And in fact, that is something that even Raila himself said. So whether he would be the candidate or not is a matter of speculation. Some are even saying that the candidate the ODM candidate might actually be President Ruto. I mean, ODM is a democratic party. Anyone is allowed to join, and then we determine who becomes the candidate. And then there are those who say that the broad-based means 2-term for President Ruto. Now, that's beyond 2027. And as I'd said, up to that point, anybody is allowed to speculate. There are those who want us to say 2-term for President Ruto. There are those who want us to say we do not have a candidate, we support President Ruto. There are those who say we must have a candidate, and then there are those who say we can have a candidate, it can even be President Ruto. All those are speculative, and all that is democratic, because the framework agreement does not cover that point.
Okay.
That is the point where we as a party will be discussing. So all those expressions are quite consistent with the framework agreement. They're consistent with what Raila said. They're consistent with democracy. So that is not a disagreement.
So when we talk about the broad-based arrangement, the 10-point agenda, I mean, it's been a while. And the simple question that Kenyans would want to ask today is, fine, you got into these arrangement, broad-based government, there are 10 points that you wanted to implement, but there's always a scorecard. How has it fared as a member of ODM? You are in Parliament. Some of these issues would land in the National Assembly. How have you fared with implementing the 10-point agenda? Have we made any strides?
Well, I think there are areas that have been covered, but there are many more areas that have not been covered. I would say that we are lagging behind in terms of implementation. Some of the areas are actually quite difficult. You know, like one of the areas we are grappling with is how to deal with the 2/3 gender in terms of implementation. And as we speak, there's even a proposal that has been brought to amend the constitution, and we are actively discussing it. And the question is, we amend the constitution and increase the number of nominated women, and by that calculation, I think we would be increasing it by about 91 to achieve it. And the opposite question is, do we have the finances to sustain additional members of parliament? And so we're actively discussing it. This is a discussion that has taken the last 15 years.
Indeed.
You can't just resolve it immediately. But it is the recognition that it was not moving so fast, that President Ruto and Raila Odinga appointed a 5-team. You remember that 5-team led by Dr. Agnes Zani?
Yes.
To fast track that implementation, to look into the specifics of what there is, and they are actively on it. So I believe that, and they have been engaging. I think they were given a limited period. I believe we should be able to achieve most, up to maybe at least 80% of what the framework agreement considered, if not 100%. But some of them are not easy matters.
We live in a pressure cooker society whereby you're not interested in having the thing on the coals for it to cook slowly. You want it in 7 minutes, you want it out now. Raila Odinga's buried on Sunday. And of course, many things are already popping out. Otiende, who's going to lead the party? Will Oburu Oginga be the one who leads the party? All the things that you talk about, people want to know who is the one who is going to lead to ensure all of these things be done. And with the fissures that, whether they are imagined or real, folks are asking, who's going to lead? And that also could be a bone of contention. Is it?
Yeah, well, that's where Kenyans need more patience than that pressure cooker society you're talking about. We've been urging Kenyans, and we've been urging our members to at least allow some mourning period, some little healing opportunity, and not jump into these speculations and issues that as if we were in a hurry, to make sure our fallen leader is immediately replaced. For now, as the National Executive Committee, we met on the day that Raila's remains were being brought, and we unanimously endorsed his brother, Senator Dr. Oburu Oginga, as the acting party leader. In terms of anyone wanting to know, that should be sufficient for now. He is the acting party leader, and the organs of the party will meet later and make a decision for confirmation or otherwise. that therefore should be sufficient for now. But the problem with people, it's at two levels. It's the question of who will lead the party.
Yes.
That has already been answered because Dr. Buru is the acting party leader. But then as a community, there are also those who are asking who will lead the community.
Or who will replace Raila Odinga.
Who will replace Raila Odinga. These things, for party leadership, you can meet, you can elect, and it is resolved. For a question like who will lead the community, that is not an elective position. That is not a thing that you can declare that I am now the leader of the community. Those are things that emerge with time. Raila was never elected to lead the Luo. He emerged to lead the Luo. And he started, even when Jaramogi was still alive, he had already started rising. So in terms of who will lead the Luo, we will leave that to time. And we are not in a hurry because that's not an elective seat. We will see how that plays. It might well be, and we hope not. The Luo are a very interesting people. Historically, do you know most kingdoms were established by the Luos, including the kingdoms in Uganda, including the Baganda kingdom, the Banyoro kingdom, most of those kingdoms. And what they would do is they would come, establish a kingdom, install a king, and then rebel against that king and move on, and leave the king and the family, to become part, of the tribe, where they had installed them. So that is what happened, and until they got to Kenya and established the Wanga kingdom. And then moved on from the Wanga
I see you
kingdom.
laughed at that, but okay.
So the Luos are not an easy people. They are not a people you can impose yourself that I'm now your leader. They are people who can choose to accept you or otherwise, and that we will leave to time.
Okay, I have to ask you a question about what the president said.
Yeah.
And he was clear that we are not going to allow anything to break this apart. In your assessment, was he referring to the broad-based government, or was he referring to the ODM party? Because speaker after speaker after speaker, speculation after speculation was that the ODM party must remain. Whether we're talking about Waziri Joho, Opiyo Wandayi, John Mbadi, James Orengo, Osotsi, everybody, Gladys Wanga herself as the chair of the party, everybody came out. Millie Odhiambo came and said the same thing. You did yourself, that the party must remain intact in order for whatever to happen. The president also seemingly said the same thing. But what we don't know is whether he was referring to ODM as the party, which would give rise to maybe he could be a candidate for ODM, or whether he was referring to the broad-based government. What's the case here?
In my understanding, the president could only have been referring to the broad-based government, because there is no way President William Ruto, who's the leader of UDA, can then speak for ODM, which is, for all intents and purposes, a party in competition with UDA. It is my understanding, and that is why all were united in strengthening the party. Whether we decide to support William Ruto in 2027 by not having a candidate, whether we decide to have a candidate to run against William Ruto, whether we decide to if you want, accept William Ruto as a candidate in our party, the first thing that must be done is that ODM must be strong as a party and not be swallowed by UDA or any other party. And that is not to deny support to the broad-based government. We are in the broad-based government because the government is UDA, but we as ODM have come and lended support to UDA by donating our experts. If we were to be weakened to the point that we do not have a strong voice, then we would not have a party. And certainly, the president cannot, for now, cannot be the spokesperson for ODM. In fact, for ODM to be useful even to the president or UDA, ODM itself must be strong independently as a party. Then my understanding is that when it comes to 2027, if President Ruto still desires the support of ODM, then we must enter a structured negotiation again. We must be very clear that if we are to support UDA, what are the gains? What are the bargaining points? And we cannot do that if we are strong, if we are not strong. We cannot do that if we allow ourselves to be swallowed into UDA for now. And that is why, irrespective of what anyone says, we must remain strong and independent as a party first. Then we can have a strong bargaining and negotiation position. Otherwise, we would have been swallowed into UDA and there would be no interest in negotiating anything with ODM. And that is why my understanding is that the president could only be talking about the broad-based. The president, what the president needs to do is to maintain non-interference with the ODM as a party. That is what would be helpful.
I mean, let's look at the broad-based 10-point agenda. And the reason why I'm talking about the 10-point agenda is at the time when it was formed, one of the key agendas that was there was to deal with police brutality, and that comes to an end. And at the time when those were the irreducible minimum, you see a year later, and there was the killing again of Kenyans in the country. And one would say that we did not hear the voice of ODM as had been before. But let's extrapolate that even further to when Raila Odinga was being taken to Kasarani, and we saw Kenyans who were killed in the presence of a man who fought for these rights, a man who, through the broad-based government, has said no to police brutality. But up to this point, you look at the legacy that was Raila Odinga, and his party, ODM, has not spoken about the killings that happened on the very day. Begs the question, why then is ODM in a union that whose leadership is going against the very agenda that they agreed to deal with in the first place?
First of all, I think a number of people have called out that issue. You remember even at the funeral, Dr. Akinyuenwa spoke to it. And certainly, police brutality is of serious concern, which is why it was in the framework agreement, and it is a work in progress. And I must say that while I think that the police have shown greater restraint than was the case. You remember, like when we were doing the demos and all, the brutality was at another level. In later times, even with the demos that I now saw, the police have generally shown more restraint. Not that police brutality is gone, it is still there. But I think the fact of having put it in the agenda, required, and with the change of leadership at the IG level and at various other levels below, I think the police have shown a little more restraint. I will tell you, for example, that on the day Raila was brought, and we had all calculated that it would be brought to Parliament, and there was a way that, it had been agreed. And we had all thought that having called Kenyans not to go to the airport, but instead to come to Parliament, Kenyans would come to Parliament and line up and wait. But Kenyans are Kenyans, and when they're mourning their greatest hero, it's a different matter. They broke all cordons at the airport, and they came even up to the airside. Now, the police showed restraint at the airport because they could have tried to use force to prevent them from coming. But I think, acutely aware of the situation, they decided that they would rather allow the breach of air protocols, and by the way, of course, we raised some things there, than use force. Then when it came now to Kasarani, first Parliament. I left the airport and dashed to Parliament because I had still hoped that we would manage. While in Parliament, as we were having a brief meeting with the committee, because I was representing I was actually calling the committee, then we realized that the crowd that was waiting had actually already breached, and they were in the process of breaching the walls of Parliament. Some were on top of the gate. And when I went, I realized that there were hundreds of thousands of people outside of Parliament, and they were threatening, to to come into parliament. Well, even up to that point, the police at least restrained themselves. You could see they had just pulled back. It took me, and I think Babu Wino, we had to jump into that crowd, just to try and talk to them and tell them that what they are doing, if they breach parliament, they will actually not just be betraying, they will be giving the police a reason to stop people from viewing. So we jump right into them and talk to them, and since many of them, they were all Baba's followers, but a majority of them were Luo, obviously. So we were even talking to them in Luo and persuading them and all. Let's just say we managed to stop them from breaching parliament. Okay? And so as they were coming, in communication,